I've been hearing thousands of stories from young men lately, detailed accounts of sexual anxiety and extreme social isolation. They are reaching out because they find themselves unable to stop a behavior they no longer even enjoy. This pattern coincides with a fundamental change in how media is consumed, the sudden, ubiquitous accessibility of high-speed online pornography. Several decades ago, finding adult material required physical effort. A person had to walk into a store and buy a printed magazine. Access was gated by physical location and social friction. That friction vanished with the combination of high-speed internet and the smartphone. These devices removed external barriers, placing infinite, private access into the pockets of the masses. By stripping away that effort, digital accessibility removed the natural limits on consumption, creating the conditions for a widespread behavioral anomaly. Early evidence of how this access affects behavior appeared 15 years ago, during the first highly connected internet wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Soldiers lived in high-pressure environments, where the threat of violence was a constant background element. For the first time, these troops had raw internet access in a combat zone. They could move directly from a high-stress environment to a laptop to view digital imagery. This created a situation where the brain processed intimacy, trauma, and aggressive digital imagery in the same window of time. In this environment, preferences began to shift. The brain, processing these high-intensity stimuli simultaneously, began to require more aggressive or risky imagery to trigger a response. These battlefield cases served as a preview. They demonstrated how the human nervous system reacts when infinite digital access is introduced to a high-stress environment. The neurological impact of this stimulus is significant. Researchers have noted that the brain processes it with an intensity similar to chemical stimulants like cocaine. Quick, repeated viewings trigger rapid spikes of dopamine in the reward center. When these spikes occur repeatedly, they etch a physical groove into the nervous system. Over time, tolerance develops. Subsequent spikes yield lower peaks, and the baseline response becomes blunted. This leads to escalation. As the natural reward circuit degrades, the user seeks out content that is increasingly extreme or violent just to reach a normal baseline. The behavior becomes a biological requirement to satisfy a reward circuit that no longer functions at its original level. If this neurological impact is widespread, why does the issue remain largely invisible to the public? When it comes to substance abuse, society often recognizes and supports the recovery process for drugs or alcohol. Pornography addiction carries a different societal stigma. The association with shame often prevents users from seeking the same public support afforded to other addictions. That shame forces the behavior into total secrecy. The user withdraws, holding the issue in because they have no place to share it without judgment. As they replace real-world connection with digital imagery, their perspective and social world become increasingly restricted. Shame ensures the issue stays in the shadows, acting as a barrier that keeps the user isolated. For a nervous system that has been rewired by these dopamine spikes, moderation is not an effective path to recovery. The circuitry requires a complete reset, which can only begin with total cessation of the behavior. The first clinical step is verbal admission. By talking about the problem, a user begins to demystify it. Acknowledging this as a biological miswiring removes the moral weight that often fuels the cycle of shame. The second step is a deliberate audit of the day to identify triggers, mapping out the specific moments of stress or boredom that lead back to the behavior. Breaking the cycle requires treating the addiction as a mechanical malfunction that requires a specific diagnostic repair. Because accessibility is what drives the habit, the third step involves building rigid structural barriers to limit that access. This means using technological tools and software blockers to disrupt the habit at the point of contact. The final step is finding a community of accountability, such as a specialized 12-step program or a therapist, to end the isolation. By engaging in an open conversation without judgment, the user replaces digital fantasy with an authentic human connection. Although digital exposure has altered these neural pathways, the human brain retains a capacity for plasticity and healing. By moving toward structured accountability and away from isolation, it is possible to reset the nervous system and restore real-world connections.